Australian National University, and then that session will be presided by Professor Vijay Sohai, former professor and head, Department of Anthropology, Allahabad University. And that we are going to observe, that lecture will take place on the International Women Solidarity Day. And again, on 26th December, not far away from us, we'll have another symposium on recent advances in archaeological anthropology in India. And that symposium will be moderated by Professor Ranjana Roy with 8 panelists. And our forum is growing in strength day by day. We have now roughly 500 registered members, and the forum is now in legal entity. It is a registered body under Society Registration Act, and with its own dedicated website with many integrated features. And we have members from different parts of the country, and many overseas anthropologists are showing interest to join our forum, for which we have not taken any decision. So we have now large number of superannuated professors, serving professor, associate professor, assistant professor, and research scholar in our forum. And this time we have thought of a noble program where our budding young anthropologists will be the speaker. They will speak, and all the seasoned and veteran anthropologists will listen. We are going to organize series of symposium on different topics, like my vision of anthropology in the 21st century, my expectations from the forum, and professional career of young anthropologists. Those are the themes we have thought of, and those who are interested, they can contact us, and we'll have those series of symposium between 12th and 14th of January 2021. And it all started with a small group, WhatsApp group created on 7th August 2020. Then we had a different focus, but with the passage of time, we changed our focus, and there was a kind of bonding between the members, among the members. And now the members then started looking beyond 2023. And now it's a full-fledged forum. Thanks to COVID-19 and the IUS executive, these two have helped us to come to this forum, because we shifted from the physical mode to the digital mode, and that was possible because of the COVID-19. Otherwise, this forum might not have seen the light of the day. And our objective is to promote Indian culture, Indian cultural heritage, and Indian anthropology through our dedicated website, by organizing different programs, academic events, and please request all your colleagues, those who are from anthropology background, serving professor, associate professor, assistant professor, and practicing anthropologists, to join our forum. And just they have to send me a message expressing their interest, and they will be admitted. And for today's symposium, we have 8 panelists. Professor Papparao, he is actually the moderator and the captain, today's captain. And we have today with us Professor Dr. Gautam Kshatriya, lead speaker, former professor, Delhi University, Dr. Mitashree Mitra, former professor and head, Pandit Ravisankar Sukla University, Professor Jibonkumar from Manipur University, Professor Subho from Calcutta University, Professor K. Saraswati from Delhi University, Dr. K. Reddy from SB University, Tirupati, Dr. Sugita Ghosh from Northeastern Hill University, Dr. Mithun Sigdar from Anthropological Survey of India. So it is my responsibility to introduce Professor Papparao, the moderator. Pardon? Professor Papparao, he was the former professor and head, Department of Anthropology, SB University, Tirupati, has had a long teaching experience I mean, he has a long 34 years of teaching experience, out of which 17 years he served as a professor. He was the SAP coordinator and dean, and he was the SAP, he was a member of the UGC SAP Advisory Committee for Vidyasagar University, Utkal University, Calcutta University. And his research area, are human population genetics, medical anthropology, growth and nutrition. And he received Lifetime Achievement Award by Delhi University and also recipient of Dr. Panchanath Mitra Memorial Award by Aesthetic Society, Best Teacher Award by Government of Andhra Pradesh. With this brief introduction, I hand over the Google Meet platform to Professor Papparao to move forward. Professor Papparao, the Google Meet platform is now yours. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gary, Member Secretary of the Forum, distinguished speakers of today's symposium on Biological Anthropology 21st Century, Professor Gautam Kshatriya, Mitashree Mitra, Jibonkumar, Subho, Professor Saraswati, Sugita Reddy, Sugita Ghosh, Singh, and all the honorable members of the forum, good evening to all of you. The topic of the symposium is biological anthropology in the 21st century. As you are aware, biological anthropology is one of the major branches of anthropology, namely focus on the study of human evolution, variation, and adaptation. Earlier, it was popularly known as physical anthropology. The founder of the physical anthropology was Confederation. He classified human beings based on anthropometric method. It was based on physical characters and adopted descriptive method. This perspective is known as typology. By the mid-20th century, a new physical anthropology was invented. A new physical anthropology whose main architect was Washburn, Professor Washburn, University of California. New physical anthropology is a transition from measuring and classification towards focuses on the processes and the mechanism of evolutionary change. He advocated multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary to the understanding of human behavior, biology, and history. Subsequently, genetics was also added to understand the process of evolution. The subject of physical anthropology expanded as it is borrowed many advanced methods and fields from other sciences. Now, physical anthropology is known as biological anthropology, with various new emerging fields: molecular genetics, in anthropometry, forensic anthropology, genetic etymology, etc. Many contemporary biological anthropologists are interested in research problems that require an understanding of both biological and cultural factors. One area in which biocultural perspective is vitally important is biomedical anthropology. The field of paleoanthropology was revolutionized by the introduction of new dating techniques and adaptation of multidisciplinary to understanding the ancient environment. Molecular genetics research in anthropology gave us a new way to reconstruct the biological history of human populations, and also used this field to understand the susceptibility of various diseases for the betterment of human life. Against this background, this symposium being organized with 8 speakers. So this is about the theme of the. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
This is about the symposium theme. Now, I would like to invite. Can I?
Yes.
Now, I would like to invite the lead speaker of the symposium, Professor Gautam Kshatriya.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just 1 minute.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Before that, I would like to introduce Professor Gautam Kshatriya. As you all know, Professor Gautam Kshatriya is a very outstanding scholar, former professor in anthropology at the University of Delhi. His area of interest are population genetics, genetic epidemiology, health, demography, population studies. He has done extensive field work for over 30 years in different tribal areas of India. He was a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Texas. At Texas, he was associated with Ranjit Chakravarti, Professor Shal, and Muller. He also received special training under the supervision of Dr. Professor D.C. Rao, Director of Division of Biostatistics, Washington University, on genetic aspects of entomology. He was a visiting professor for various universities in India and abroad, University of Mexico, Utkal University, Punjab University, Sri Venkataswara University. He has also completed several research projects funded by ICMR, DPT, University of Delhi. He published several research papers and books and also organized several conferences. With this, I would like to invite Professor Gautam Kshatriya, the lead speaker of this symposium, to make his presentation.
Thank you, Professor. Think I am audible?
Yes.
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay. Mr. President, Professor Bera, Mr. Member Secretary, Professor Gregory, Mr. Coordinator, Professor Papparao, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, everybody. And thank you very much for giving me this platform to share my views. Actually, many things already has been pointed out by Professor Rao, but I will take up certain things which I think are important for the young generation to come in. So when we think about, and I'll be dealing mostly with the challenges, as I said, for the bioanthropologists in 21st century. And when we think about challenges in 21st century, I am occupied visualizing many different kinds of avenues. So it is difficult to discuss all of them in a very short period, but I will just try to introduce some areas of anthropological relevance. My focus is essentially on tribal population groups. Ironically, there is no consensus on this term even after 73 years of independence. So, I mean, who would study these tribal populations if not anthropologists? And moreover, I have extensively, largely worked in tribal areas, and therefore I'll be keeping my focus there only. At the outset, I'm not particularly convinced by the way anthropologists and biological anthropologists in particular have studied the socially and economically disadvantaged groups, especially the tribal groups, and among them PVTGs, and among them the small groups. This is an area which demands justification from the anthropologists in the light of various new techniques and methods that have come up in the recent past. Even the recording of selected SNPs, mitochondrial DNA, Y chromosome polymorphism, insertion, deletion polymorphism, RFLPs, etc., in all the PVTGs in this context would be an important contribution of biological anthropologists. DNA sequencing of these PVTGs may provide important clues regarding migration pattern in historical past, and they are very important from the perspective of genetic divergence. Small populations are subjected to random fluctuations, and therefore there is need to find out factors responsible for effective population size, and also there is need to study the genetic structure of all the 75 PVTGs, because these groups ultimately may prove very important in genetic divergence of our species. In addition, there are several other avenues open to budding anthropologists in human population genetics. Now, with the available DNA technology, the problem of origin and parental affinities can be studied with great precision. For example, while studying the genetic affinities of Sri Lankan population long back, we found Sinhalese had Bengalis and Tamil parental affinities, where Tamils had contributed 70% and Bengalis 24% to the Sinhalese gene pool. Similar such studies on mixture genetics are far from sufficient in Indian context. There are plenty of admixed groups in India and enormous scope in this area of population genetics. We can also study genetics of immigrant populations. For example, Siddhis, Pars, Jews, Portuguese, etc. We studied Siddhis. Siddhis are immigrant groups from Ethiopia, East Africa. In India, they are distributed largely in Karnataka and Gujarat. They follow Islam, Hinduism, and Christianity. They were brought as slaves from East Africa some 600 years back by the Portuguese. There is more to this theory of this story of immigration. I'll not go into the details of that. I'll only say that we conducted admixture analysis and we found that they still retain high percentage of African genes in spite of the fact that they have adopted local language and cultural practices. We also undertook studies on Indo-Aryan speaking tribal groups and compared with the Dravidian speaking tribal groups, and we found underlying unity among tribal groups. All this leads to four important hypotheses. A, genetic affinities are independent of linguistic affinities. Genetic affinities are not independent of linguistic affinities. Religious or cultural practices are independent of genetic affinities, and religious and all cultural practices are not independent of genetic affinities. One can find many such examples in India and can test several different hypotheses. This area of research in anthropology is wide open in 21st century. Another area of interest is genetics of substructured groups, substructured population. In fact, very few studies, almost negligible, are available on genetic aspect of substructured population. My student and I worked out substructured genetic diversity among Chaudhary tribal population of South Gujarat. We also worked upon genetic heterogeneity among the substructured Naga population. We obtained very interesting information in both the studies in their background perspective and they are published in some good journals also. We have many substructured populations by geographical division and or by social ranking, which literally does not promote Mendelian breeding. For example, we have Santals, they are residing in Mayurbhanj, Purulia and Dumka, and their regional separation hardly promote their regional mate selection. That means they belong to the same tribal group, but because of geographical isolation, they are not able to mate with each other. Similarly, we have Kutia Kons, Dongaria Kons, and Desia Kons. We have Hill Khadiya, we have Dudh Khadiya, we have Delki Khadiya. One can go on and on. There are so many of such substructured groups in tribal and non-tribal population. So there is a plenty of opportunity to study the genetic structure of Indian substructured groups, and especially those from northeastern region also. That will give us a lot of information on the genetic richness of Indian populations, as also on some Mendelian diseases if present at all. We have no information on that front. Another big challenge for biological anthropologists, particularly in India, is the area of molecular anthropological studies. DNA sequences can be compared among the population groups to test the hypothesis about the evolutionary relatedness of population in different ecological and environmental areas. It can provide significant new insight into the contemporary spread of Indian population and their relationship to earlier human groups. Further, there is an urgent need for initiating genomic database of informative markers in order to understand history and identity of Indian population. History of mutational changes in terms of accumulation of mutations that might have occurred in at least four classified Austroasiatic, Dravidian, Tibeto-Burman and Indo-European speaking tribal population groups of India can give us definite clue about the pattern of migration, origin and degree of their relatedness. Now we can develop several such types of studies in Indian context, and there are immense possibilities. Different types, models and methods of natural selection are also immensely important in human population. For example, culture change and evolution of hemoglobin S, evolution of diet and lactase persistence, evolution of CCR5 delta 32 allele and disease resistance, human skin color, etc., etc. Our DNA contains a clue to a considerable amount of natural selection within past 12,000 years, ever since the introduction of agriculture. Human populations have seen rapid evolutionary change in last 12,000 years. So there is a great scope to study the process of natural selection as a part of evolutionary change and culture in Indian population, especially in tribal populations. The risk of type 2 diabetes has been suggested to be a target of natural selection in humans. We need to study the selection pressure. We need to study selection pressure in loci of susceptibility to diet associated with type 2 diseases. Various studies have revealed a variant of transcription factor 7 like to type 2 diabetes. This type of natural selection can be explored in tribal groups which are fast affected by developmental activity. This type of studies can be extended to other degenerative diseases as well in national population. The area of gene culture coevolution and human diet is an important area and needs to be addressed by anthropologists because findings of such studies can be utilized in the health policy for better health care. One must understand that basic research in primary is the primary requisite for any public health application. I would also state that human genome is very mysterious and bears the signature of past events as well as culture behavior, occupation patterns, and several other environmental stimuli which it has undergone through several thousands of years. So if we know the details of this mysterious genome, it will help in developing effective healthcare strategies. The antiquity of such mutated genes which have come up when we talk about the disease and the association with the different markers, this you can trace the antiquity of the genes, and because the methods are now available and which will help us to know the unfolding of the past events. The rapid demographic and cultural changes, geography, and the history of Indian population is likely to provide answer to the structuring of genetic variation among them. In a nutshell, mutation, drift, flow, and natural selection reflect the past structure and history of human population. And it also shows how cultural behavior affects genetic variation. The two basic components, population structure and population history, are important tools to understand the dynamic of the population genetic diversity. In fact, we have tremendous amount of great reservoir of genetic diversity and immense scope to study from multifaceted approach. Another area which is required to explore would be epigenetic anthropology. Only few anthropologists in India are working on it. Professor Saraswati and her team has done some good amount of work in this area. How in certain conditions epigenetic pattern is modified or leads to aberrant changes in epigenome is a matter of interest, particularly in certain non-communicable and chronic diseases. And such possibilities can also be explored among the tribal population near the urban centers. Retrieval of genetic information directly from ancient fossil specimens is utterly lacking in India, which can help in understanding the human evolution and specifically the theory of coevolution. Because of resource crunch and lack of collaboration, this area of hominid evolution in paleoanthropological research in India is grossly neglected. Now then we can compare human genome with non-human primates. This is another area of research in India. Genetics of complex diseases and obesity and genome-wide association are the new frontiers in Indian context. Forensic anthropology is one area which has been part of anthropological syllabi, but its application by the anthropologists using sophisticated DNA technology and statistical software is far from satisfactory. It requires a lot of precision, training, resource, and statistical understanding and equipment, etc. All the research problems which I have highlighted in human population genetics, including the molecular anthropology, require good and well-equipped laboratories, which means we ought to have consortium of different laboratories and involvement of knowledgeable biostatisticians. In this regard, forum has to take, my request, sorry, is to take initiative to see the formation of consortium of different laboratories so that young anthropologists as well as are well trained in laboratory methods and biostatistical software related with relevant research problems to compete with other groups who are not anthropologists and taking away the credit that actually belongs to us. It would be incomplete without talking about two very important diseases among several others which are inflicting Indian populations. Prevalence of leprosy and tuberculosis in tribal population groups is a matter of great concern. We have very limited investigation among them. Unfortunately, leprosy is increasing in states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, MP, Odisha, etc. Anthropological studies and on these two menacing problems, along with associated stigma, are urgently required among tribal population so that health providers are additionally equipped to deliver effective health care. Similarly, biology of human reproduction, aging, and biological basis of human behavior are yet other areas where Indian biological anthropologists can get and deliver new insights. Body composition, physiological variables, body physique and genetic adaptation in relation to environmental degradation and occupational hazards has to be undertaken seriously for understanding of human health. Needless to say that genetic and physiological adaptation to varying environmental conditions among different Mendelian groups is yet much needed areas of research. This takes us to another dimension of human ecology, where there are immense or innumerable possibilities for anthropologists. One can also establish an ecologically driven theory of demographic change. The relationship between technological advancement and its use in land resources, the social and economic factors, the marginal cultivators, and whole bunch of land use and reforms have tremendous impact on the dynamics of the population growth. So anthropologists have a lot of scope here in demographic anthropology. Having highlighted many areas, it is very important to state that Indian tribal population are also experiencing phenomenal change on the social, cultural, and economic fronts for the past more than 60 years. Like all developing countries, large-scale developmental activities and urbanization in India have brought significant changes in lifestyle, occupational patterns, and dietary habits of these tribal communities, which were once considered outreach groups. Furthermore, new urban centers are developing quickly near rural and tribal areas, leading to emerging public health problems of degenerative diseases such as diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular diseases. Undernutrition has been rampant among Indian tribal population. Stunting, wasting, and nutritional big problems. However, in addition to this, various developmental and economic activities have made them vulnerable to various metabolic risk factors. This apparent shift is converse to the traditional wisdom that regarding tribes that they do not encounter lifestyle diseases. Urbanization and its triggered lifestyle changes and cultural shift are crucially associated and suggestive factors of non-communicable disease burden and nutritional extreme among Indian tribes. Only few studies have investigated the prevalence of undernutrition, hypertension, and metabolic risk factors involving multiple tribes. It is also of great concern that females are the worst sufferers. Obesity is coming long way among them, besides being suffering from undernutrition. In this context, problem of adolescence also becomes a matter of great concern. In India, adolescent population accounts for 253 million, which is more than the total population of 18 Western Asian countries. Out of 253 million adolescents, 44 million belong to scheduled caste and 23 million adolescents belong to scheduled tribe. If we just take these 23 million adolescents of scheduled tribe groups, we find that besides significant prevalence of undernutrition, obesity and metabolic syndromic conditions are starting infiltrating in these groups as for the reasons I have already highlighted. There are at least 5 identifiable metabolic risk factors: abdominal obesity, high TG level, low HG level, elevated blood pressure, and high fasting blood sugar. If one possesses any 3 or more than these, then he or she is considered to be carrying the metabolic syndrome. My student and I studied the adolescents of Kukna tribe of Valsad district, South Gujarat, and found that at least 10% of adolescents were obese and 6% were suffering from metabolic syndrome, and prevalence was higher in females. So this condition is a cause of serious concern in tribal population besides its prevalence in non-tribal population groups. And if we look into other 44 million of scheduled caste adolescents and remaining 186 million adolescents of Indian national population, it presents a grim picture. And anthropologists at least need to investigate this situation, this large chunk of tribal population, to document the gravity of situation in near future and suggest remedial measures in policy interventions for controlling this menacing public health problem. So this is where biological anthropologists should ponder upon in near future, that is the triple burden of undernutrition, obesity, and metabolic risk factors and or metabolic syndrome among Indian tribes. Lastly, I would say that with more than 104 million tribal population in India, besides 1300 million non-tribal population, efforts of biological anthropology should be directed to study these groups both from anthropological and public health perspective. I have highlighted earlier also, which include both evolutionary and non-evolutionary perspective. This is by itself is a gigantic and a challenging task. Finally, my advice to dear students and young colleagues that you all conduct long field work among communities or Mendelian groups and be productive, which is very important, and write articles on the problems related with the anthropological community in high impact journals. That is the way discipline will survive and recognize and flourish and never be second fiddle to other disciplines. Thank you everyone for being today. Thank you, sir.
So thank you, Professor Gautam, for a nice presentation. Sir, now the next speaker is Professor Mitra, madam.
Yeah, would you like to introduce Professor Mitashree?
Yes, sir. Madam has not come in there. Shall I introduce? Shall I start?
Yeah.
Dr. Mitashree Mitra, an eminent anthropologist, former professor, and head of the Department of Anthropology, Ravisankar University, Manipur. Research focuses on travel, especially particularly vulnerable tribal groups and areas of interest, travel health, indigenous genomics, and policy research. She held many administrative and academic positions in the university. She was a member of several national bodies such as Anthropological Pressure of India, Rashtriya Manava Sangha Sangrahalaya, Ministry of Culture, State Planning Commission member. She is also a member of editorial board of various journals and member of several academic associations. She handled several projects funded by DBT, DST, AISH, UGC, PASIT, and she received many awards also. With this background, may I request Professor Mitashree Mitra to deliver her talk.
Namaskar, Namaskar to all of you. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
But your video is not visible, madam.
Yes. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my views on biological anthropology in the 21st century from this.
Madam, would you kindly switch on your camera? It is switch off.
Sir, there is a problem, so it will disturb actually. That's why I tell you.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Honorable General President of the Indian Anthropological Forum and President and Vice Chancellor of Sambalpur University, Professor D.K. Behra, General Vice President, Professor Shalina Mehta, Dynamic Member Secretary of the UIAF, Professor S. Girgari, respected Professor Papparao, Moderator of the today's symposium, distinguished panelists, patrons and members of the Governing Council of UIAF, and members of the UIAF family, and my dear friends. My earlier speakers make it easy to be present my views on physical anthropology or the biological anthropology. Thank you, Professor Gautam Khatri. I am very optimistic, so I am starting with a very positive note. Recently, in November 2019, we have actually celebrated the 100 years of anthropology in India and remembered our glorious past through various academic activities. The teaching of anthropology began in 1919 in the University of Calcutta, and now at least I think more than 40 universities having the Department of Anthropology and also in various colleges. They are teaching at least the two specializations in most of the universities, that is the social anthropology and the physical anthropology. The second half of the 19th century witnessed actually the beginning of anthropological researches in India, and it continues till date, whether it is sociocultural anthropology or the physical or the biological anthropology. So it shows the progress of anthropology in India. So there is no need of, I think, depression for the youngsters that there is no scope in anthropology, whether it is of physical or whether it is of social anthropology. 19th century witnessed the beginning of anthropological researches in India, and it shows the progress of India in very much. And anthropology is the holistic science, systematic and the evolutionary discipline to study man. It has divided into 4 distinct branches. I'm mentioning here because each branches focuses on the different set of research interests and generally uses different research techniques. That is the physical anthropology, the sociocultural anthropology, archaeological anthropology, and the linguistic anthropology. So one of the unique aspects of the anthropology that distinguishes it from the other social sciences is that it contains a branch of physical anthropology that links anthropology to the biological as well as the physical sciences. However, humans are biocultural creatures, and throughout their history, the interaction between the environment, behavior, and biology has been an important one, as it is for all other animals too. We are always curious about ourselves. So, the physical anthropologist also, the quest was to answer the basic inquiry about himself, that is, who are we? Where do we come from? Why do we look and act the way we do? Why we are different from each other? What does it mean to be human, and what will happen to in future? And still this quest is going on. Traditional physical anthropology, as mentioned by Professor Papparao and Professor Gautam Kshatriya, due to the methods we used to distinguish or to see the variation between the human beings, that is the physical measurements, it calls the physical anthropology. But it is now not only a physical measurements, the study of physical measurements, but now we study the human beings with using different methods other than the physical measurements. That's why the name has been actually given by the Washburn, that is the new physical anthropology, and now it is called the biological anthropology, which is actually much wider term, and although it is interchangeably used. Recent years have actually witnessed a kind of revolution, particularly in the field of genetics and particularly with the advent of the Human Genome Project. We use the new techniques of analysis of the physical being or the physical organism or the biological organism, and that is the techniques we use of the molecular genetics. And it expands the area of our research, and this is the recent trends also. The Professor Gautam Khatri have highlighted details on it. Although I have worked in this particular area, but I think I should shift my talk to other areas because he has highlighted so many things very nicely. So there is a paradigm shift in the trends of physical anthropology towards studying the human population both at biochemical genetics and the molecular level. The potential for molecular techniques in healthcare has caused excitement and even aid to the study, challenging us to discover who we are and where we come from, challenging the theories and beliefs and of the earliest scientists. Today, attention is increasingly focused on elucidating genetic susceptibility to the common multifactorial diseases and the study of genes causing diseases causing diseases is going on at faster pace than ever. One of the major aims of any science lies in the usefulness in the service of mankind and thereby the nation. Due to, I think, due to less visibility of the applied researches in biological anthropology, it has not actually get recognition what it deserved. Now we have entered in the second century of the study of anthropology in India. So let us look back and try to understand what lesson we should learn from our past. What I learned, the lesson from about my 35 years of journey in anthropology is that having a good strategy, having a having a good strategy in scientific research is the key to success. design a very thoughtful, strategic approach of doing research and apply wisdom gained through not only from our own experience but others too, and from other disciplines too. It means do review and review not only from the anthropological journals but the topic what you have chosen or what we have chosen related to it from other discipline also. All of us know that the knowledge has no boundaries. So there is no harm in taking knowledge from other disciplines for better understanding of the problems or the core of our discipline. Although we always proudly claim that the discipline of anthropology is a holistic study of man, but in practice we always segmented it. We forgot that our biology is governed by our sociology, means social structures, rules of marriages, customs, etc., govern the behavior of genes or our biology and environment to interact with with it. So, for better understanding of any interpretation of the results of the research, whether it is in biological or whether it is in the sociological anthropology, try to integrate it. National education policy or the new education policy also stressed upon quality research and interdisciplinary approach of the research. So it is the demand of the demand also. I considered myself very fortunate to have both kind of training and involved in research projects of state as well as at the national level, where this integrated approach actually helped me to give insight and the success of the research, which is success in the sense that the recommendation of that research has been used by the government or the policy makers. I'm thankful to Professor Mutatkar, with whom I worked in the one of the national program, and the policymakers have accepted the recommendation of those programs, that is for the mainstreaming of Ayush under NHRM. I am not claiming that I must also reminded of one of the excellent lectures on tribal development recently delivered by Professor S.B. Roy in our university refresher course, in which he stressed upon systemic approach of tribal development. And he says that it is the approach of the tribal development to get the successful implementation of the program. I think this approach is also needed to some extent, accepted or needed to some extent in research related to the biological anthropology or the biocultural anthropology. I am not claiming that we have done nothing, but the need of the hour is to think how we can contribute towards policy issues, how we can contribute towards achieving SDG goals through our research activities. I have gone through some of the PhD theses related to, as an examiner, related to reproductive health or the maternal child health and the utilization of healthcare services, which are excellent in their core content. But I never find it addressed the SDG goals related to it. Thus, the outcome of it did not hit the policy or help in achieving the SDG goals. This is one of the many examples which I actually I would like to share with all of you. Similarly, the study of human growth, nutrition, and health, or the body composition, physiological measures, and the adaptivity, which are at most important even in the 21st century. Although some of the anthropologists considered it as a traditional anthropology. But for me, it is still a priority area of research, and it It is not required much sophisticated lab also, as Professor Khatri was reminded it, because biological anthropologists are now always claiming that we are not having labs. No problem. If you are not having labs, collaborate with someone, collaborate with National Institute, or even you can hire services. Those who are actually give you the analysis, but you have to interpret those results. So that is not a problem. But if you think that the priority research area is only the genomics, it is not true. But all these areas, I think it needs proper planning, skills, as well as integrated approach. We cannot ignore to see the crop pattern and the food security or the socio-economic status of those communities to whom we are going to study the growth and nutrition and etc. etc. So integrated approach is always better to understand our findings or interpret our results. We have to innovate and make some difference. It's different. एक advertisement आता है ना, there is one advertisement. It's different. So we have to actually innovate to make difference in our research. Maybe we are using the anthropometric technique. Maybe we are going to interpret with some nutritional indices, but we can also think of actually creating some new indices. That makes a difference in your research. The dynamic relationship, and it will also help in answer the dynamic relationship between the biology and the culture. So issues of malnutrition, I think, and the sportsman adaptability in space, the adaptability in space, designing tools and furnitures for the disabled person, for their comforts, military persons, submarine people, persons, etc. are also the areas which has been ignored, I think, by the biological anthropologists. So we have to look in these areas also, or find out the new areas other than genomics also. Then it is the area of forensic anthropology, where we can successfully use the methods of traditional anthropology as well as the techniques of molecular genetics to answer ongoing forensic quest. I am giving these examples with the experiment within my own department where I served along. Our students are equipped with these techniques, and now in the state level examination of the forensic lab, more than 70% students belong to the anthropology discipline. So it can happen. And the medical anthropology is, I think, another area where biological and cultural anthropology can unite together. We have also experimented it with the DST funded project. 10 crores project has been given to establish a very advanced lab where we have identified certain medicinal plants which are actually using for the treatment of the autoimmune diseases, and now it is the next step that chemical and molecular analysis will be going on gradually, and maybe some molecule with that is an interdisciplinary, actually, the research project. So pharmacy is also involved in that. So in this way also we can make visible progress in the field of medical anthropology. Although research work has been done in some of the areas which I have mentioned here, but it is in sporadic nature. In addition to that, common parameters and methodologies were not applied in all the researches. So therefore, actually, it is not a comparable at the national level or the regional level. Also, some of them, sometimes specific tribes or common community has been explored for some objective with almost similar parameters with a very short span so many times. That is the another issue. The result is that we are unable to put a regional or the national picture with regard to those studies, and naturally there is actually the poor visibility of the research due to this. Therefore, I think priority areas of research should be decided at the university level, regional level, state level, with the discussion in a different forum, with the discussion with the government, state government at the national government level, discussion with the planners, etc., for the betterment of the society, so that our research will be visible and useful also. This forum can take lead in this regard, and this is not a new approach. We experimented it to a certain extent to get a good response and recognition of research from the state government. This is the another lesson I learned, that one should exchange the ideas of research with the planners and the governments, those who are actually going to implement it. So there is no harm in discussion with them. Lastly, but what I would like to say is there are many actually the exciting challenges for the young anthropologists in biological anthropology area to accept the challenge. Every discipline and subdiscipline have pros and cons. We have to turn the tide from negative to positive. So be optimistic, whatever you do. We, the senior anthropologists, shoulder the responsibility and will try to make it possible for you to be successful under the dynamic leadership of the president of this forum. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and have a patient listening on it.
Thank you, madam, for your nice presentation. So the next speaker is, sir. Shall I move, Professor Deepak, sir? Shall I move?
Yeah.
The next speaker is Professor Saibom Jibonkumar Singh. Professor Jibonkumar needs no introduction. He is a professor of physical anthropology in Manipur University. He was past sectional president of Anthropological and Behavioral Section of Indian Science Congress Association. He held many important positions in the university. His areas of research interests are human biology, growth and development, forensic anthropology, sports anthropology. Currently, he is a member of Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya Samiti, Ministry of Culture. He has handled many research projects funded by UGC, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Department of Social Welfare of Government of Manipur, Department of Science and Technology, Government of Manipur. He published several research papers in repeated journals and participated in various conferences. He was also a recipient of Teaching and Research Career Achievement Award in the year 2018. With this background, may I request Professor Jibonkumar to make his presentation.
Thank you, Professor Papparao. I think I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you are not visible. You are audible, but
photograph is not visible.
Okay. But I have on my this one camera. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, good evening, Professor D.K. Behera, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Sambalpur University and the General President of the Forum, Professor Gregory, Member Secretary of the Forum, Professor Papparao, the moderator of today's symposium, members of the General Council, all the practicing anthropologists, young anthropologists. At the very outset, I feel myself very much privileged getting this opportunity of using this platform to address my sincere and honest opinion on the state of our discipline, more particularly on biological anthropology. Well, before I begin sharing my humble and sincere opinion, I would just like to confess that I represent a small tweak among the eminent and stalwart biological anthropologists of our nation who actually devoted all their career and whole their life for upbringing and popularizing our discipline. Well, the theme of today's symposium is biological anthropology in 21st century. But the former earlier speaker, Professor Gautam Kshatriya and Madam Mitra, they have well elaborated, they have explained everything, all prospect, all avenues, then recent trend, and what else I will have to speak of. So my deliberation will be, it shall not go depth into the subject matter because they have already elaborated, and it will be rather a very, very general talk, particularly confining to some of the convergence gap in general and challenges, because as many of the listeners belong to other branches of anthropology as well. So starting with the nomenclature, there is a dilemma, I feel. Though physical anthropology started as early as second half of 17th century, you see, it began as an academic discipline in North America around second half of 19th century, devoted particularly to the measurement of bodies and skulls, that what we call as anthropometry and craniometry, with an objective of classification of human races from a comparative anatomy point of view with other non-human primates. By that time, most of the anthropologists were basically physicians who were teaching or who taught anatomy in medical colleges and medical institutions, but interested in human evolution. Now, by the middle of 20th century, if I am not wrong, it's in 1951 that physical anthropology sprang up into a new physical anthropology, later called as, or later the nomenclature was given as biological anthropology. It was through synthesis of what we have, genetics, anatomy, then ecology, paleontology, and evolutionary theories. And it was under the main architect of Sharut Washburn, because we should not forget Washburn when we talk of biological anthropology, because it was he who actually introduced the term biological anthropology. He was in fact the professor of anatomy and anthropology of Chicago University, and later he joined California University. So biological anthropology, as we all know, deals with biological adaptation, variation, then evolution of human beings, living and fossil past and present. But in the context of human culture and behavior in a very, very holistic approach. I repeat again, in the context of human culture and behavior in a holistic approach. Now, here comes the dilemma. Should it be physical anthropology or biological anthropology or physical/biological anthropology? In some of the universities, say like Delhi University, Calcutta University, then in Punjab University, and if I'm not wrong, in Mysore University also, they give specialization in the name of biological anthropology. Whereas in Amity University, then IGNOU, then Drivugar University in the Northeast, Guwahati, then my university, Manipur University, Sikkim, then North Bengal University, and even in Honarary University, they give specialization in the name of physical anthropology. And Professor D.K. Behra is also very much here. In Sambalpur, if I'm not wrong, it is in the name of physical/biological anthropology. Similarly in Nehu also. Now, my point here is, why is the difference? Why not the uniformity? This creates confusion. As for example, when a post is advertised for specialization in physical anthropology, can a person or can a student who has a document saying that his specialization is biological anthropology can apply? I don't think so from legality point of view, even though we know that these two are the same subject, or these two are one and same, I mean. Now, the question is, who are at fault? Who are at fault? We or the students? We, the professors, senior professors, or authority of the university who design the syllabus, or the students seeking the job, and ultimately who suffers? I think this needs to be addressed, and I think our forum should consider such small but silly but still very important one, because it has legality. Because from legal point of view, your mark sheet or mark statement said that you are not specialized in physical anthropology; you are specialized in biological anthropology. It's my humble opinion. Well, then coming to another issue. In the past few decades, the horizon of biological anthropology has expanded, covering a wide arena of subdiscipline and subspecialization. So, my earlier speakers, they have already elaborated it. So, from conventional anthropometry and classification on one end of the spectrum to high-tech, forensic anthropology and molecular anthropology on the other end of the spectrum. But I feel this is just the beginning, and to accomplish, we need to learn and equip with theoretically sound knowledge, new ideas, new methods, and new techniques. Here the question is, in how many of the Department of Anthropology in Indian University do they have all those sophisticated lab, even for serology, nutrition, or physiology, forensic anthropology, or even molecular anthropology, well equipped with all the infrastructures and logistics, other than the basic our anthropometric laboratory? To be very specific, how many departments in our country has a PCR, RT-PCR, or gel dog system, spectrophotometer, or electrophoresis unit, water bath, all those, and even rocker, then vortex machine, laminar flow. Even I don't think most of the department have this millipore distillation plant and comparison microscope, fingerprint comparative. I have just imagined, and I have just thought of that it may be hardly in 3 universities. One is Delhi University, one is Madam Mitra's University, Pandit Ravisankar Sukla University, and another is Manipur University. I'm not very much sure of Calcutta University, but I don't think they have also well-established molecular lab. Out of the 40 universities and 160 colleges in India where anthropology is being taught, I think Professor Kshatriya, Professor Mitashree, and Professor Saraswati must be knowing much better than me. They have much idea because they are working on molecular anthropology. Again, are the biological anthropologists working in different universities of India well trained, acquainted with all the technology, new technologies? I don't think so. No one person can be expert in neither all the fields nor a particular subfield can stand alone on its own, detached from other allied and overlapping disciplinary areas. So Madam Mitashree has rightly pointed out, if we do not have those facilities, if we do not have those infrastructures, we can tie up, we can go with other, we can collaborate with other departments, other institutions where such facilities are there. So here comes the interdisciplinary approach. So it is necessary for us to collaborate with social scientists, anatomists, paleontologists, physicians, nutritionists, and geneticists in an interdisciplinary approach. And beyond that, we can go for multidisciplinary approach. And beyond that, we can go for transdisciplinary approach. However, if I'm not wrong, despite of our optimistic and cheerleading thoughts and opinion, in fact, I feel that we have failed to a kind of integration and synthesis which enables all of us to fulfill the promise, the ambition, and the mission of a true biological anthropologist. Keeping aside the allied disciplines, my humble opinion is that there seems to be a state of disjuncture amongst the biological anthropologists, forgetting that our shared area of interest is studying human beings from biological aspect on one end and from holistic approach on the other. We actually need to overcome such a pessimistic views, rather a self-centered opinion of superiority and inferiority complex within the subdiscipline. If we instill such a, serpent message into the fresh and the naked mind of our students, I think it will become a legacy and create a hatred among the practitioners of our subdiscipline. Truly speaking, more than anything, we, the biological anthropologists, should interact, communicate, and integrate extensively across the holistic division of subdivided biological anthropology and beyond. This is another issue. Similarly, the disjuncture and the cleavage existing among the three branches of anthropology needs to be addressed. We should not forget that our shared area of interest is studying human beings, as I said, in a holistic approach. What we, the biological anthropologists, study is evolution of man, can be understood and explained from biosocial aspect. So human biology has nothing without society. So I feel that biocultural approach, which integrates the ethnography and cross-cultural perspective, it actually plays a very, very important and epitomizing role in understanding biological anthropology. Actually, the result of our activities of the biological anthropologists, can be determining factor for achieving public relevance and governmental support. In short, there is a need to address towards the popularizing of biological anthropology. People are very hungry for reports on the areas addressed by biological anthropologists. And in order to earn our popularity, I feel that we should get ourselves engaged in the forefront in certain core areas of the interest of the public, such as public health, disease, food, nutrition, forensic cases, then biomedicine and evolution, as well as rest. We should look for eye-catching activities and go for outreach activities, open house activities, which can attract the attention of the public of what the biological anthropologists can do. Now I feel that why should we ponder thinking about why we are less known by the public when we have so many better things to say about ourselves, about the human beings, about human society than do the psychologists and doctors and social scientists have. we are very much sensitive and aware with the dramatic changes undergoing and the new developments and new technology in the field of health, disease, then medicine, even biology, ecology, genetic engineering, then it is of sure that this field definitely need anthropological dimensions to be added. We can add, we can give our opinion. So biological anthropology, I feel that it has a big future addressing the controversial and what we call frightening prospect when intervene with our traditional training we received and the modern scientific process. Now, once again, just before concluding, it is to be stressed, I'm stressing it again, that biological anthropologists can accomplish its vision only when we achieve necessary unity amongst the biological anthropologists of different subfields, then amongst the anthropologists of three main branches of anthropology, and work in collaboration with the other allied systems, allied sciences in a interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary approach. And I'm sure our forum, United Indian Anthropology Forum, would certainly play a pivotal role, an important role in addressing these issues. Well, finally, I again say, I, who represent a small tweak amongst the eminent and stalwart biological anthropology, is solely responsible, and I may be blamed, and I shall be extremely sorry if my sincere and open-hearted deliberation hurts the sentiment of someone. I beg pardon if so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Jibonkumar Singh, for your excellent presentation. Sir, shall I move to another speaker?
Yeah, it was excellent.
Now, Professor Subho, sir. Can I? I'm introducing the Professor Subho, sir.
Yeah.
Professor Subho is an outstanding scholar in biological anthropology, working as a professor of anthropology, University of Calcutta. And he was also former head of the Department of Anthropology. Earlier, he also served as faculty member of Department of Anthropology, Allahabad University. His research mainly focused in understanding health of population from its biocultural perspective. He was past president of Anthropology and Behavioral Sciences section of Indian Science Congress Association. He is the chairman of Ethical Committee of Anthropological Survey of India and also a member of Rashtriya Manava Sangralaya Samiti, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and also a member of and member secretary of Indian Confederation of Academy of Anthropologists. He is presently editor and member of various journals, namely Journal of Indian Anthropological Society, Indian Journal of Physical Anthropology and Human Genetics, the Oriental Anthropologist, Women's Midlife Health, and he is also a chairman of one NGO's trust, namely Manbum Anand Ashramam Nityananda Trust. With this background, may I request Professor Subho to make his presentation. Professor Subho.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah. Professor Deepak K. Behera, the president of this forum, Professor S. Gregory, the member secretary of this forum, Professor Papparao, the moderator of this program, distinguished panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. The presentation that I would like to, the discussion rather, that I would like to make is something different from the speakers, our preceding speakers. It will be on challenges in publishing biological anthropological research in 21st century. Now, I will be presenting some slides before you. So, well, this particular deliberation is intended for the doctoral students and young scholars. Now, let me put before you some of my thoughts. Why do we publish? as scholars, we strive to do high quality research that will advance science. We come up with what we believe are unique hypotheses, base our research or work on robust data, use appropriate research methodology, and as we write up our findings, we aim to provide theoretical insight and share theoretical and practical implications about our work. For many of us, this is the hardest part of research. My second thought is publication these days has become compulsory. Apart from academic interest of a scholar, the compulsion of publishing articles these days is something different. Number one is to achieve a good academic performance indicator score, that is API score for recruitment and promotions. And also it has become a prerequisite for submission of thesis. Now these compulsions to a large extent have increased the demand for publication among the scholars. And eventually we find in the 21st century a noticeable surge in online and offline journals that facilitated publication outlet. But truly speaking, many of these journals do not have a stringent peer review process or policy. There are journals which many of us know publishes article within a week of submission. Thus, some of these articles, despite having the potentiality in adding to the body of knowledge, lose credibility. And the scholars miss the opportunity to learn about their shortcomings and thus could not improve on their analytical and writing skills. And I find this to be damaging for the growth of a discipline and for a scholar. You know, recently UGC has come down heavily on these journals. As a managing editor of a UGC care listed journal, I receive on an average 4 to 5 manuscripts per week. And most of these submissions fail to meet the minimum expectations to be sent for external review. My third thought is, it has become challenging publication. But before I move into these challenges, let us see what are the biological anthropological journals where scholars from the field of biological anthropology used to and still strive to publish. I have placed it in as alphabetical order. For example, Anthropologizer and Zeiger, 1924, Sweetwood Science Publishing House. Annals of Human Biology, which started 1974, Taylor Francis, and the editor is, one of the editors, Noel Cameron. American Journal of Human Biology, 1989, Wiley Publication House, started with Robert Malina, and it is the official organ of Human Biological Association, and the present editor-in-chief is Leonard. Formerly, its predecessor was Lynette Seward. American Journal of Physical Anthropology, 1918, the oldest physical anthropology journal so far to my knowledge, was started by Alex Herdlicka, Wiley Publication. Collegium Anthropologicum, which started in 1977, an official organ of Croatian Anthropological Society. Homo, 1949, which was once an Elsevier publication, now Sedgwick Publishing Science Publishers have taken over, and its editor is Frederick Rusing and many others. Human Biology, 1921, started by Raymond Pearl, who remained as an editor-in-chief till 1940, is the Wayne State University Press and an official organ of American Association for Anthropological Genetics. Its current editor is Ripon Malhe. And we have Human Heredity, Krager publisher, which started with Acta Medica Statistica, Genetica et Statistica Medica. And later on, it became, in 1969, it took the name of Human Heredity, Journal of Biosocial Sciences. 1968, which was actually started with the name of the Eugenic Review, published from Galton Institute, and in 1968 it became Journal of Biosocial Sciences with C.G.N. Massey-Taylor as an editor-in-chief. But all these journals mostly focused in comparative perspective, publish articles on comparative, developmental, and ecological evolutionary. Now, In India also, we find journals like Indian Journal of Physical Anthropology and Human Genetics, the only journal which only promotes physical anthropological researches. Other journals like Journal of Indian Anthropological Society, Man in India, The Anthropologist, Oriental Anthropologist, Journal of Anthropological Survey of India, they also publish physical anthropological research papers along with other papers from other subdisciplines. Now, all these journals have been promoting publication of research related to biological anthropology, and the editorial board mostly comprised of scholars who were from the field of biological anthropology. But the situation has changed a lot. There has been a paradigm shift in the publication policies of these journals, and so also in the discipline of biological anthropology. With the turn of century, what we find that in biological anthropologies, they are now researching in a wide range of topics like epigenetics, nutritionogenetics, metabolic disorders, social investment in growth studies, reproductive ecology and genetics, behavioral ecology, public health, and many others with a interdisciplinary approaches. They are also taking a critical stand and making it more analytical, addressing the theoretical, methodological, and practical implications. So we have no space for descriptive research these days, and these descriptive research are not finding places in good journals. Similarly, if you look at the aims and scopes of, if you look at the journal's perspective, so I talked about the biological anthropological discipline, what paradigm shift took place, and now if you look at the aims and objectives of these journals, there has been a paradigm shift. I have marked it blue. Annals of Human Biology, which publishes physiology, ecology, epidemiology, global health, and also you can see it is written that it has a wide international readership, including epidemiology. So the readership has extended, and so there was a compulsion of these journals to expand their base and expand their absorption. Look at American Journal of Human Biology. Look at the last paragraph. Written, marked it by green. Like many other biological oriented disciplines, the field of human biology has undergone considerable growth and diversification in recent years, and the expansion of the aims and scope of the journal is a reflection of this growth and membership diversification. See, this is the aims and scope. It is written here. So I can show you Journal of Biosocial Science, how they defined what is an international journal. JBS, last paragraph, last 3 lines, JBS is truly international, both in terms of geographical areas covered, its contributors, its reputation for high quality and outstanding scholarship has made it one of the leading journals in the area of biosocial science. So what I'm trying to say to you is that how these journals has expanded their absorption and also incorporating papers, research articles from various other disciplines. And also the JBS provided a very good definition, what is an international journal, right? So coming to, similarly, we also find there are some number of interdisciplinary journals that have come up, like public health, nutrition, social science, medicine. In social science and medicine, I find only Catherine Panterbrick, who is from the field of anthropology, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Women and Health, Menopause, Gene, and so on. There are a number. And anthropologists, biological anthropologists are contributing in these journals. Some are very specialized journals, like Menopause, Gene, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. They are very specialized journals. Some have a broad, some are not that specialized. They have a broad spectrum. Now, you see that we also have some Asia Pacific journals that has come up in recent years, but some of these, why do we consider these journals to be worth? And these are the aims and scopes. I will not go into it because of shortage of time. Why these publications of these journals are considered to be worth? First one, publishing house matters. If a journal gets published from Sage or from Oxford or from Cambridge or from Wiley or from Taylor and Francis, it is really worth, because look at the editorial board members, their profile. So it is obvious that the review process will be stringent and your manuscript will be refined. Their stringent peer review process, double blindfolded peer review process, and the type of comments you receive if your manuscript gets the initial clearance from the editorial desk. Fantastic. And I personally have been tremendously benefited through this peer review processes. They're abstracting and indexing. Look at their abstracting and indexing, their circulation of the journal. They have a wide readership from different disciplines, right? So, and secondly, in these journals, 10% of the submitted manuscripts are accepted. So much competitive. And also, I'll talk about the impact factor. But one thing is very important. These journals promote researches that has novelty. Novelty in terms of study design, novelty in terms of topic, novelty in terms of what new knowledge you are contributing, what theoretical understanding you are developing, or what is the practical significance of this research in public health policies. So, and they also prefer that how precisely and comprehensively you are producing your research. Now, I will just touch upon the abstracting and indexing of Annals of Human Biology. You see the abstracting and indexing, the range of things. Gene, what is the range of abstracting and indexing of these two journals? I'm citing these two as examples. Now, coming to impact factor, many scholars are confused what is an impact factor. Thomson-Reuter impact factor is the best impact factor, and many journals these days are coming up with 7.5, 2.3, but Thomson-Reuter rating factor is important. And how this impact factor is calculated, impact factor of a journal is calculated by dividing the number of current year citations to source items published during previous years. Say, for example, A, total cites in 1992, American Journal of Human Biology, how many of the journals cited articles in 1992 from American Journal of Human Biology, and how many of these articles of American Journal of Human Biology got published in the previous year, 1991. Then they divide the number of articles published in 1991, they divide the B means the numerator, which is the number of citation of this American Journal of Human Biology articles of 1991 divided by the total number of articles published in 1991. Sometimes you can say 5-year impact factor. This is 1-year impact factor. 5 year means you have to go 5 years. That means 1990 to 89, 86, 88, 87, 87 or 86. So this 5-year impact factor. And these impact factor actually helps you to understand that what is the wide readability of this, and this gives you the visibility of your articles too. So publication of research articles in good journals will facilitate in increasing the visibility of your articles, the appreciation in terms of your citation of your research to the academic. We need to introspect. Really, we need to introspect what amount of contributions of biological anthropology we are making from this subcontinent. What worries us to communicate to these journals? Is it the worry of rejection? Or we are not confident to communicate to these journals? Now, what are our shortcomings? You see, writing for academic journals is highly competitive. Is a competitive activity, and it is important to understand that there could be several reasons behind rejections. A recent survey study by Elsevier, shared by Elsevier, said that 30 to 50% of the manuscripts gets desk rejection. Desk rejection means as soon as you submit, the editor rejects it, right? Before they move into the peer review stage. And the reasons they cite mostly are language. Also, they say that objective not in line with the scope of the journal, or the manuscript formatting you have not followed, or we do not have satisfied the journal's publishing expectations. Now, in one of the issues, one of the editorial board meeting of an international journal, Women's Midlife Health, in which I am associated with, I raised this issue that from this those contributors who are from non-English speakers, they find it difficult to communicate to these journals. And the editorial board members, they admitted it, and they considered that we will do the copy editing of some of the journals which are worth, but because of language, we shouldn't reject, so we should take care of this. So I am very happy to communicate, but many journals do not. They outright reject it, and they ask to check their manuscript, get your manuscript checked from native English speakers. And recently, I found a very interesting phenomena, which was very unlikely. The very old journal, Human Biology, in one of our articles, I received the galley, where a professional copy editor diligently copy edited the article. I have not seen in other publication of my publications that human biology still does this. This is a practice. So in my more than 20 years of professional career, I have observed several shortcomings in the manuscript preparation and submission process that often lead to research being rejected for publication. Now, if you are aware of the shortcomings, if the scholars become aware of their shortcomings, the chance of getting published also will increase and in their research profile and the career progression. So the first point which I would like to make is do not rush submitting your article for publication. So authors sometimes prepare a draft and they communicate it without going through it meticulously. Right? So what happens as soon as it gets rejected from the editorial desk, it becomes disheartening for the scholar. I say, no, please don't do that. Read the manuscript again and again, leave it for 1 week, again read it, request some of your colleagues to go through the article to see what are the loopholes in it. Check if there is a logical flow in your argument, whether you have succeeded in developing the argument of your research, whether there is a continuity in the subsequent paragraphs and no divergence from the objective of the study. Choice of words, phrases are very important in any communication and so also in publication. And use of tense. Result part should be in past tense, so also the method part. We still find scholars writing they write it in present tense, but these contemporary journals, in good journals, they prefer in past tense because you have already conducted the study. Avoid unnecessary normative descriptions, like it should be noted here, quote unquote, or the author's belief. It's better when you are stating some general fact, right? Scholars argue present tense. But if you are presenting or it is well accepted in this way, so try to understand what type of what type of phrases, what type of language you will use for different things. Now, while drafting the introduction, what I would believe that you should see that whether you have fairly built up the rationale of the study and the theoretical framework and the research hypothesis centering the objective. Many of our scholars, what we do not write the introduction focusing on the objective. We're reading in many things. But when you are writing a research article, you need to be very focused to the objective so that the reader does not get diversified or digressed, that what actually the author is trying to make. Literature citation, don't load with huge, write, provide relevant contemporary literature. The method section is the USP of your research. That is the recipe of any cooking. And you have to explicitly deal with your sampling strategy. Don't write random sampling. Random sampling is you can randomly select the areas of the study, but participants, you cannot do it randomly. The point is that we need to project that how minimized the error, a sampling error in your study. How you have selected the participants, detailed their inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, also how many what percentage of the participants refused to take part in the study, what percentage participated, data types, please spell out how you define, how you have collected data on age at marriage, how you have collected data on food, what is the protocol of your study, laboratory method, measurements method. Provide details the protocol of the study. Why? Because the future researchers can replicate your protocol. That's the main objective. Also, try to find, if you're using some scales in your measurement, mention how you have checked the internal consistency with Cronbach's alpha and so on. How you overcame the recall bias. Say, for example, if you are doing age at menarche, age at menopause, age at first childbirth. So how you have overcome the recall bias in the studies. Provide details of the statistics, each and every nooks and cones. I remember that in one of my articles which got published in Women and Health, editor was Ellen Gold, a famous biostatistician. She made us review the article 8 times. Every single point she raised and sent back to us. So anyway, I'm very much, second publication when we did in Women and Health, the number of review reduced to 3, not 8. So statistics, again, what statistics we are using? Is it a parametric test or non-parametric test? We often do t-test. We often do such and such test without knowing that why I am doing this test, without understanding the distribution of the variables in the population. Result section. Make the result section very comprehensive. Check the figures presented in the tables and the description that you are making in the result are matching. Many of the cases, what happens, they are mismatch. The significance level mismatch. Okay, the values even mismatch. Sometimes always provide frequencies when you are making a descriptive table. The p-values you should mention, and do not reiterate the figures presented in the table in the description of the result. Try to find out trend of the result, because the journals will not give you much space. You have to be very comprehensive in making the table, in the presentation of these tables. Discussion section, what we will find that many of the scholars, they reiterate the result. It is not that. You show the trend in the result and then make a critical appraisal why you found this result, why you got this result. Try to give an explanation to it, and also relate your result with the existing literature, how far it is going with the theoretical understanding of this phenomena. You may contradict what is the existing theoretical knowledge about this particular incident. And finally, at the end of this discussion, you zero in to the point that what contribution or what additional knowledge you are providing here, new knowledge you are adding, and what is the policy implications of it. Conclusion, do not reiterate the discussion. Make it more focused and try to provide the take-home message from your research. Limitation of the study. And all this proactive approach, will an attitude will reduce the chance of rejection and disappointment. And limitation of the study, we often cite lack of small sampling size. Well, small sample size is okay, but try to give more insight, thoughtful in your understanding, and this will help your limitations. If you cite the proper limitations, then the future researchers would refine to their research in this slide. Selection of an appropriate publication outlet is very important. You see, finding the right journal for your article is dramatically improves the chance of acceptance and ensure it catches the target audience. For example, if you are publishing in very highly specialized journals, say for example, maturitas, climacterics, menopause, these are specialized paper on menopause. So here your manuscript will compete with all the menopausal researches that are going on. Simultaneously, if you are if you are planning to submit your article in a broad spectrum journal like Women and Health, which publishes articles all areas related to health, there I'm winding it up very shortly, sir. And in there, you have to prove that you have to compete with other women health related articles there. So it is challenging both ways. So you have to decide to which type of journals you will publish, you will submit your manuscript. So it's a point that you should self-rate your manuscript. Self-rating is very important, self-appraisal of your manuscript, that whether my manuscript is based on huge data set, whether I have done some sophisticated statistical treatment like discriminant function analysis or path analysis or correspondence analysis or principal component analysis, which will offer a new body of knowledge and will address human biological issues. We also can think of that whether this type of information or publication has been done from India, reporting. So this is very important. Not that this part from this part of the country, not from that part of the country, or from this population, not in this population. This cannot be a unique. You have to see, you have to provide some novelty in your research, no repetitive research, and match the depth of your manuscript before submitting and check what are the recent publications that has taken place in that particular journal. So these are the ways by which you can improve. And less experienced scholars, what they do, they submit it 2 to 3 journals. Beware, you will be violating Copyright Act. Before submitting to the journals, just absorb the aims and scopes and submission guidelines. These days, word limit has become very reduced. The journals which we published in 5 years before, they have reduced the number of tables. Word limit have reduced. Reference limits have reduced. So absorb the guidelines, the reference styling, these are very important. Otherwise, these days in online submission, you will get stuck up if your number, if you are not adhering to the submission guide of this. Make a good impression with the title and abstract. Try to put some catchwords in the title, so that suppose, for example, you are using a new statistics, you can write that. Say, I'm giving you an example. I wrote a paper. The title was "Factors that Discriminate Differential Age at Menopause." So here I use the word discriminate function analysis in this way. Or you may write, the title of paper like this: Does menopausal status affect blood pressure and BMI? Or is low ovarian reserve a determinant for early menopause? So try to add some catchwords in your article title that will attract also the readers and the editors and the reviewers. The abstract, try to make it very comprehensive and bring in the rationale, objectives, data type, trend in result, and policy implications of the conclusions. Address the reviewers' comments very carefully. Don't avoid oversight. Be very serious. And my first article that I contributed, submitted in the journal. Just 1 minute. In Maturitas, I oversighted it, and that's the reason my article got rejected after the first revision. But then that was a lesson for me. And then you have to, I will suggest that, be clear about what they are telling. Try to respond to each and every comment, whether you agree or disagree, in a very meticulous manner, and take it very seriously. And I think that I have done my job. So thank you very much. So I wish my young scholars, my young colleagues will pick up these points, and we will see a surge of publication in biological anthropological research in these journals. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and for your patience hearing.
Thank you, Subho, for a nice presentation with regard to the problems faced by young scholars, particularly for publication in biological anthropological journals. So now I will switch over to the another speaker, Professor Saraswati. Madam, is there? Yes. Now I am introducing Professor Saraswati, Madam. Professor Saraswati is a distinguished scholar in molecular anthropology, Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. She was postdoctoral fellow at the Albert Einstein Institute of Medical Sciences, SUA, University in New York. Earlier, she also worked as a faculty member at the Amity Institute of Biotechnology in Noida. She handled several research projects funded by DBT, DST, ICMR, ICSR, NCW. She has published several research papers in international journals and contributed significantly in the field of molecular genetics. She organized several academic programs in the Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Now, may I request you, Madam, to make a presentation on anthropology in genomics and epigenomic era.
Thank you very much, sir, for introducing me, and a very good evening to all of you. I'm thankful to Joshi sir for introducing me to this forum, and also Behra sir for giving me this opportunity to share my views. And of course, regards to all the elders present in this online symposium right now. And I just, if I have to start with my talk, it is basically, the title has genetics and epigenetics. If you just go by the two terms, we immediately move on to big technologies, sophisticated equipment, and then complicated philosophies or hypotheses, or whatever it is. We always consider these two, epigenetics and genetics, to be very, very complicated, difficult, and all that. And of course, but nowadays we also consider it to be fashionable, latest, recent. But as per me, if you talk of genetics, it is as old as Mendel, and epigenetics as old as Lamarck. What is epigenetics? It is nothing but Lamarckism, recoming of Lamarckism, where Lamarck said inherited characters, acquired characters are inherited. So epigenetics is that only. And actually, I wanted to talk something else. What happened is the Professor Kshatriya and Madam Mitra, Mitashree, all the other physical anthropologists except Dr. Subho, everybody spoke so many things. At the end of the point is multidisciplinary approach. So there is nothing, old wine in new bottle. So that is what we are all doing here right now. So when we talk of genetics and epigenetics, whether both these terms are related to DNA, number one point, and then the changes in these two mechanisms in human cells will lead to the change in gene expression. Okay, and if there is a change in the gene expression, there is a change in the phenotype, or in the, it may cause disease, or it may cure disease, or it may manage a disease, whatever it is. It is basically it is disturbing the central dogma, DNA to RNA to RNA to protein, protein to phenotype. This is what epigenetics is. But genetics, genes, I always say that genes behave differently in different environments. And so this differential behavior of genes is because of your epigenetic mechanisms. So I will not go into the details of genetics and epigenetics. And here, then I will be concentrating on health. Kshatriya sir has also has already spoke so much of the contribution of anthropology in various facets of human life. But here I am only talking on terms of health, because I work in health field. So when we talk of DNA to RNA to protein to phenotype, whether it is health in terms of health, or whether it is in terms of health in terms of genetic diseases, health in terms of infectious diseases, health in terms of lifestyle diseases, health in terms of mental diseases. And also even drug resistance also depends on this central dogma, epigenetics and genetics. You cannot, and health is the major driver for evolution. So it becomes an important component of anthropology. So when we are talking of health, we cannot get away with DNA. So anybody, whether you are a social anthropologist, cultural anthropologist, anybody, at the end of the day, we are talking of human well-being and welfare. So unless there is a healthy individual, healthy community, healthy population, you cannot have a healthy setup. So what I mean to say is health is quite important. And when we talk of health, then we have to talk of genetics and epigenetics. And this epigenetics and genetics absolutely biological. You cannot think of anything else except biology. And so it was under the discipline of medical field, where people always try to understand the gene to phenotype in a linear relationship. And absolutely they failed. And later on, some biomedical people, some other, community medicine, social and preventive medicine, these were some other disciplines that have entered into medical field. People are trying to understand the health through at population level. Okay. So, and the beauty of anthropology as against medical fraternity is medical people try to understand health through disease. But we try to understand health through both disease and health. I mean, good health. What I mean to say is, for us, how the importance of a diseased person who has a disease is important to us, but the person who is not having a disease is also equally important. If this person is having disease, why this person is not having disease in the same environmental conditions? So that makes where epigenetics and epigenetics come into play. And when we talk of from genotype to phenotype, whether it's genetic phenotype or epigenetic genotype, what we say is there are many things that are entering between or influencing this relationship. And this relationship is influenced by many factors, which I'm not going to get. And most of the, even today, epidemiologists, community medicine people, they're also considering societal factors, many things, social factors. But culture is something very important, especially in Indian context, especially in developing countries, East Asian countries. The culture is very important. Every community has its own culture, own norms, own beliefs, own faiths. That acts really on your health. So, and I don't want to much talk on health because I can't even talk in front of so many social anthropologists sitting here. But that is very important. Unless we address culture in understanding health through genes and epigenes, we will not be able to really come up with the plausible solutions. So effective use of epigenetics and genetic technologies to understand the health and disease through the lens of socio-cultural attributes is definitely a domain where anthropological input, anthropological thought, anthropological contribution is a must. So we should not just think that we can get away just by doing genetics and epigenetics. No, we can't do. Even drug response has some cultural importance, influence. So here, I think Papparao sir told me to strictly follow time. So I'm hurrying up. So I think I've already finished 5 minutes. So let me just get back to most of the things, what we can do, how we are going to do. First thing is, we have to bring awareness. For example, you talk in the family, the female of the family is blamed for not producing a male child. That is one of the important social problems. So such problems can be solved by bringing awareness among populations. So the so-called anthropologists have to reach populations to make them aware of these genetic aspects. It is not that we are going to educate them, but bringing awareness is important. Second is systematic screening. Already, Kshatriya sir told us that we need to generate data, systematic screening of populations, systematic documentation of data, not only on genetic diseases, but also candidate genes for various lifestyle diseases, cancer. There are certain candidate genes, at least those mutations. And it is not that every gene is responsible for every disease. So there are certain population specific genes. Indians populations, the mutation in a gene responsible for a disease in European context may or may not be associated with the same disease in Indian context. Even within India, there are discrepancies. So we need to document the genetic polymorphisms of various population groups. Third important point is, we also need to produce data on community-specific genetic associations with various diseases. That again, nobody can do, only anthropologists can do. Community-specific associations. If a mutation is associated with a disease in one population, we should be able to identify the socio-cultural attributes which are triggering this association. And if it is not associated, again, we have to identify what are the socio-cultural attributes which are not triggering the association. So this type of data generation is a must. I'm touching upon very few things. Another important thing I wanted to bring out is ethical guidelines given by ICMR. Madam Neeta, madam is here. I think ICMR has given, and whenever I take a project for ethical committee, there is a lot of problem, especially in hospital data. They say after your completion of your project, doing 4 or 5 genetic markers, you have to throw the DNA sample. That is very, very unfortunate. So what I mean to say is the ICMR guidelines presently existing are not anthropological friendly. So I think we need to do something about this. And third important point is, lastly, I would like, last point in the area is, when we are talking of merging social, cultural, biological, physical anthropologists and working together, the methodologies have to be different now. If I'm just understanding the variation using ABO blood groups, there is a certain frequency distribution and you calculate sample sizes. But if you have to include cultural aspects, there is a discrepancy. So we need to sit with the statisticians, and we have to come up with good methodologies or sample size calculation processes where we come up with good results. That is very, very important, because I'm really facing a lot of problem. If I'm doing a genetic association, if I have to also talk in terms of their distribution and socioeconomic status, cultural, it is difficult to calculate sample size. So we need to sit and discuss and come up with good protocols for socio-cultural anthropological research. That is very, very important. And these are the 4 or 5 things I'm just proposing. I'm coming up with. And I would like to say how to go about. Everybody is saying that we need to generate data, we have to screen this, we have to do that. Everybody is saying that, but how do we go about? So the best thing is, as Mitashree madam said, don't worry that we don't have infrastructure. Doesn't matter, you have to collaborate. So that is quite important. Then infrastructure minimum should be there. And actually, more than research, the undergraduate and postgraduate anthropology students need to be trained in genetic technology. Minimum laboratory facilities should be available in all the university setups, and then they need to be trained at minimum level. Unless we do that, we cannot make them understand what is genetics and epigenetics. And then next is in small infrastructure. Teamwork is the most important thing. People, we have to, once I was in US, when I was working as a research associate, I was not very happy with my work. So I said, I don't know this, I don't know this, I don't know that. Then the professor said, you cannot overnight become a statistician, nor you can become a cultural anthropologist, nor you can become. So unless you collaborate, you cannot have a good output. So collaborations and teamwork, very, very important. Teamwork is a must now. And then symposia and this symposia also, I mean, I'm sorry to say, when we are conducting last symposium we have conducted, this forum, it is exclusively social anthropology symposium. Now it is exclusive physical anthropology symposium. So I don't, somehow this idea, again, we are seeing anthropology as we are dividing and saying it, so that is okay, but initially we are doing it. But in future, I think we should start with a problem. Take a problem and how social anthropologists, how physical anthropologists can contribute to solve the problem. So I think the forum should come up with major priority areas. We cannot solve all human problems. There are millions of problems. We will not be able to do that. But at least top priority. If you take diseases, at least one or two diseases, let us pick up. Let us work on them. How social anthropology, how physical anthropology can contribute and get together. So then. Next is just Professor Subho was talking about the publications. How many symposia you do, how many talks you give, how many discussions you do. But finally, at the end of the day, if we tell anthropology is important, anthropology is, nobody will listen to you unless you publish. Unless you publish in good journals, you make an impact in publication world, we will not be heard anywhere. So Madam also talked about you have to make an impact on policy. That can be done only when we make good publications. This culture of research should be starting from at least undergraduate level. And then I think, sir, can I have one more minute?
Oh, yes.
So, sir, I just, all these things, I am coming with small idea. If we have to do this documentation, associations and all these things, you need huge money. It is a pan-India project, mega project, where crores of rupees are required, and funding agencies will be scared to give to anthropologists. They think we are not competent enough to do all those things. So at least from a modest beginning, we can make through the forum, or all interested anthropologists, young anthropologists, where they can contribute their ideas, they can contribute their hard work, and their at least one or two PhD students from each part of India. We can get together, and it will be, every student will have their own two PhDs from each area. So data will be automatically generated. We don't need funds from there. And this is a very small, very, very easily it can be done. Once it is done, we have a primary data, and then we can go for a bigger mega project based on this data. I think this is a suggestion that I would like to give to forum. I'm too small to give a suggestion, but I felt I should say something here. So we can go ahead with this. But when such a big no financial commitment, we are not taking any money from there. Here, we need to have a good team, like-mindedness. You should have a sacrificing attitude. You should also be emotional coefficient should be high, and you should be accommodative. If you have all these qualities, you can be in a team. Otherwise, if you think I'm the best or he's the worst, we cannot make a team. So if at all, if you think my idea is good, let us all plan out for pan-India, non-profitable or project where, for example, I take up two students in Delhi, I pick up two population groups. My two students will work on two population groups, collecting all possible data of anthropological data, starting from cultural practices to blood. Similar data will be collected from all the parts of India by PhD students, but you should find a good committed student. Then we can come up with something within 2 years. We can bring some little data on the basis of which we can show to government that this can be done. So this is my idea. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, madam, for a nice presentation. Now, another distinguished speaker is Dr. Kozan Reddy. Now, sir, please permit me to introduce Dr. Kozan Reddy.
Yeah, please do that.
Dr. Kozan Reddy, a distinguished young scholar working as assistant professor at Department of Anthropology, Sri Venkatswara University. His research areas mainly focus on genetic epidemiology and clinical nutrition. He published around 90 research papers in various reputed journals. He completed several projects funded by DST, ICMR, UGC, CSR, NMBRB. He is also recipient of 2 awards, namely Young Investigator Award by International Congress of Atherosclerosis, Hypertension and Coronary Disease, and North Memorial Award by International College of Nutrition. He has also traveled to Middle East countries also. Now, may I request for Dr. Kozan Reddy to make his presentation?
Sir, good evening to you all. Is it audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sir, first of all, my mentor still feels me young, but I am not that much young, sir. I am at back end of our initial stage of entering old age. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Now, I want to share some of my views and the hypotheses which I have tested and to be tested with you in this e-room. Is a burning problem for all the people, especially for anthropologists, is health management, sir. Everybody talks about health. Then the thing is that how to manage the health. So for me, when it comes for health management, it is controlling or eradicating the infection so that we can achieve the full life years. We can reach the full cycle of zodiacal years. When we talk about aging, it's a progressive accumulation of changes associated with the disease and death. India is moving as aging population. At the same time, these non-communicable diseases, especially old age diseases, once we call as old age diseases like heart diseases, cancers, arthritis, respiratory problems, several of these diseases are slowly shifting towards downtrend. That means they are coming for 60 years, 50 years, 30 years, and now adolescents are also equally affecting with these non-communicable diseases. The important thing which I would like to leave for you is that technology has developed enormously. So much of technology has developed, and disease managerial techniques have developed. At the same time, diseases are also developing. The year-wise, the statistics, if we cross-examine the statistics on various diseases, both communicable and non-communicable diseases, they are increasing. Every year they are increasing, but not at the same kinetics. And anthropologist, he can view that these kinetics is differ between population groups. That's so much of inter and intra variation is there in this prevalence of these diseases. That is where really anthropologists can share something than other disciplines like medicine or pharmacy or biochemistry or something else. For example, I would like to take about this Kshatriya population of Kerala state. I have done extensive work in tribal populations, caste populations of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, including Telangana. And we have published several papers also where we have talked much about this health management, health economics. And now this Kshatriya elderly population, they are known for elderly. 80 plus is very common. And centenarians are also common with sound health. With the financial assistance of Indian Council of Medical Research, I have conducted and studied some of the salient features of diet, especially their cultural practices. a unique cultural practice which is still sustaining in that tribal population is the secret of their longevity, and which we cannot see in the adjoining tribal or caste populations who are living within their vicinity. So very interesting outcome has been there, which I have published in Journal of Biochemistry and Biophysics. Again, Indian Council of Medical Research came forward to address some of the issues that longevity is a phenotype, which is both in genetics and biology. We propose that high density lipoprotein is one of the phenotype which predispose for long life expectancy. But HDL is not a homogeneous, it has different types. Then I proposed another project to the Indian Council of Medical Research that I would like to study this HDL polymorphism like HDL2, HDL3 phenotypes, how they differ within the population and compared to the other populations, which will give a platform for us to understand the genetic architecture of these tribal populations. So here, the thing is that as an anthropologist, we can assess both culture to gene to assess the secrets of their longevity, secrets of their health. I have conducted several studies on adolescents also, because I told you that non-communicable diseases like heart problems, hypertension, obesity, diabetes, all these are increasing. Even people from 30 years, 25 years, 20 years, 15 years, people are also affecting with these tragic things. It's in a very unfortunate situation. Some of these studies say that even I have studied extensive studies in Tirupati and other areas in tribal populations of adolescents, where I have seen that beyond biology, the obesity is increasing, childhood obesity is increasing, and mother education is one of the significant phenotype, especially in male population, male children, to become the obese. The mother with higher education when compared to with illiterate, for male child, is 3 times at risk in developing high blood pressure or hypertension, because Indian mother is so liable to male child than female child. She continuously feed like anything, and he become obese. So here we can see instead of addressing several of the biochemical parameters, what we opine that if we address these cultural phenotypes of mother, education, her attitude, and social norms, definitely we can give some solution for that. Apart from that, again we have proposed a project and it is sanctioned about to study these adipocytes and cytokines in this tribal population of Tirupati, how these markers differ in different socio-economic conditions and in different caste populations, and children are affecting with this hypertension and obesity. The project is about to initiate. Similarly, this chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is there. It affects only in the people who smoke, especially male population, and also females who go for natural burning of this wood. But all the smokers or all the inhalers of wood burning are not affected with the COPD. There is some genetic architecture which can be explained by some cultural phenotypes or predisposing to this chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Likewise, the prevalence rates also, if you take the prevalence rates of various diseases like diabetes, hypertension, heart diseases, cancers, especially breast cancers and cervical cancers, which are increasing enormously in women, now we can see that we can assess some populations are free from this condition and some populations are heavily burdened with these diseases. Why? Is it a biology? Is it a nutrition? Or is it a cultural phenotypes? After all, when we talk about the health management, it comes under the umbrella of environmental sustainability, socio-economic well-being, physical activity, nutrition, and biology. Though these statistics, if we see that the fat intake has been increased and physical activity has been reduced, which are the two are the important factors for this predisposition of the disease. But now the challenge before the anthropologists is how to increase the physical activity. In the modern era, everybody is going like an engine, airplane. Then how to increase their physical activity is a big challenge. Definitely we need to find out a solution in the workplace itself and increase the physical activity. It is going to be a tool for management of many of the diseases. Lastly, I would like to say that though we may not directly involve in drug development, definitely we can develop clinical tools by assessing biosocial phenotypes, cultural phenotypes and biological phenotypes, and with the statistical models. If we go for if we can develop a clinical tools, definitely it will be very invaluable for the human populations, especially for doctors when they are screening, when they are offering treatment for that. We have started this type of tools in the disease of preeclampsia. In Tirupati, we have developed this clinical tool, and we want to extend this to other diseases also where we need to develop this too. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I think I have written 1 or 2 minutes to you, sir, my teacher. I think this is.
And thank you, Kozan Reddy.
Thank you very much. Okay, sir.
For a nice presentation.
Yes.
Now, the another very distinguished scholar, young scholar, is Dr. Sugita Ghosh. She is an assistant professor, Department of Anthropology, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. She is a recipient of UGC Raman Fellowship for postdoctoral research in United States of America. Her postdoctoral work on genetic adaptation to high altitude at Syracuse University, New York. She also received a postdoctoral fellowship from Indian Council of Medical Research. Currently, she is collaborating with Professor Vitale in a Belgium government project. Her research is mainly focused on genetic adaptation to high altitude and also on heritability estimates. She published several research papers in reputed journals. She made extensive field work on tribal populations of Himalayan region. Now she is going to address on human adaptations to high altitude population with special reference to northeast part of India.
Thank you, Prof. Papparao. Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me take 1 minute to convey my sincere.
We are not able to hear you, your speech.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it was not loud enough.
You have to speak loudly. You have to speak loudly.
Thank you so much, Professor Papparao. Good evening, everyone. Let me take just 1 minute to convey my sincere gratitude to Professor Behera, Professor Gregory, and also Professor Papparao for giving me this opportunity, this wonderful opportunity to share my views with the stalwarts of Indian anthropology. I feel extremely humble. Now, it's already mentioned by my predecessors, the shift, the tremendous paradigm shift that we have been witnessing in biological anthropology research from last century to this century and last 2 decades of this century as well. High altitude adaptation study is no exception to this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So as I was telling you that biological anthropology has witnessed tremendous paradigm shift, and the high altitude study is no exception to this. Where, of course, this is one area of research. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I cannot see anyone anymore.
Yes, you can go for next slide. Next slide.
Okay. So as I was telling that, yes, this is one area of research where also we see a lot of changes, a lot of shift from the last century. Of course, this is one area of research in biological anthropology, which is very, like, still we have vastly unexplored area in this research with tremendous or profound dearth of data, and only handful of anthropologists working in this area of research. And however, the significance of the study in biological and in high altitude adaptation study is tremendous. For example, especially knowing how to adapt in at high altitude area to survive and to adapt at high altitude area. Am I visible and audible to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. For example, if I mention here that currently 50,000 soldiers of the Indian Army are deployed in various mountainous locations in eastern Ladakh in sub-zero conditions, and that is just one area of Himalayan regions. Similar kind of deployment, of course, we have entire Himalayan belt in Tawang, easternmost part in Arunachal Pradesh, also in northern Sikkim, or the glacier, Siachen Glacier area in LOC. So the soldiers are deployed there, and they are constantly exposed to high altitude stresses and challenges at high altitude. As a result, as a consequence, many times they also developed acute mountain sicknesses. For example, nausea, vomiting, dyspepsia or diarrhea, shortness of breath, sleep disorder, dizziness, headache. These are when they are at high altitude for a brief period, but over the year, when they are posted there for several years, they also develop chronic mountain sickness like thrombosis, high altitude pulmonary edema, high altitude pulmonary hypertension, or pulmonary embolism. These are all chronic diseases that the soldiers generally develop. And because the soldiers are not born to high altitude areas and they're just many times deployed there overnight, they're not also acclimatized properly. Similarly, we see that mountaineers or tourists, those who are ascending to altitude area for various purposes, they also develop acute mountain sicknesses. And it has been reported that the mountaineers, almost 80% of them generally show AMS or acute mountain sickness. So that's why this high altitude adaptation study has extreme significance when we think about all the population that are going there and not able to cope with the huge challenges and stresses that is observed and that is felt at high altitude. And of course, one reason could be because they are not acclimatized before their rapid ascent to high altitude. Many times, especially for the soldier, they do not get enough time to get acclimatized to 1,000 meter or after that going to the higher altitude. And so as a result, they face problems. So what are these challenges or stresses at high altitude that is so detrimental to human health that I've been mentioning about? The most significant ones are low barometric pressure. Because of that, the oxygen and carbon dioxide pressure in ambient air is very low. As a result, in each breath, we get less oxygen inside our body. High solar radiation, cold, humidity is very low. As a result, we get this rapid dehydration that is also very much stress or dreadful on human body. Limited nutritional base. Here in that picture also you can see this was clicked in Peru, Cerro de Pasco, around 4,400 meter altitude. There's no tree, in fact, not hardly, there's no tree. This is what happens when we go to high altitude. Tree also needs oxygen. So nutrition is obviously very scanty, very limited when we talk about these high altitude areas. However, the most significant stress at high altitude is this low barometric pressure. What happens is that because of this low pressure in the ambient air, with each breath that we take in, we get less oxygen inside our body. And our body needs constant supply of oxygen for each and every function in our body. Without that, we cannot survive. So that is the reason it is so difficult to adapt, and you need to adapt successfully. You need to know how to cope with these stresses, and that is the reason those who just ascend to high altitude area rapidly, they develop acute mountain sickness very soon, within few hours, and because of this low oxygen pressure mostly. Interestingly, even after all these stresses, all these challenges, there are indigenous people living at high altitude as high as 5,000 meter and above permanently. And living at altitude above 3,000 meter, of course, causes alterations in ventilatory, cardiopulmonary, and hematological responses. Here you see this indigenous population pictures. On the left side is the Peruvian Quechua from Cerro de Pasco. On the right side, Tibetans from Tibetan Plateau. So these populations are the most successful ones who are living there for generations, for 1,000 years, successfully adapting, surviving in those low oxygen area, in those stresses, under those challenges and stresses. They are the most successful because they are living there for several generations. And example of such populations from India also, we see that populations like Bords or Monpas or Lepchas, Sherpas across the Himalayan mountain regions who live there. Now, the research in high altitude adaptation study in biological anthropology has documented from the last century, has documented these populations pretty well from 20th century. All these populations, like here we see a picture of Lepcha and a Bord. Those studies were mostly comparison between highlanders and lowlanders from the same ethnic background. And it suggests, the studies from those last century suggest that highlanders or high altitude population of the same ethnic background have greater lung volumes and chest dimension as a byproduct of this greater lung volumes or respiratory volume. Also, they have higher blood pressure and body mass index than the lowlanders or low altitude people at all ages. Also, growth is slower and more prolonged amongst the high altitude people compared with the growth at low altitude people. That's the reason high altitude people are mostly short in stature and bulkier in their build because they have greater BMI, body mass index, as compared to lowlanders. With the turn of the century, we see the high altitude adaptation studies started hovering around more Jiva studies or genome-wide association studies and genotype-phenotype association studies. In this regard, angiotensin converting enzyme gene ID insertion, deletion, polymorphism has significant influence on high altitude natives, it has been found. And of course, studies from other part of the world, from Peruvian Quechua again, suggested that there is a high or excess of I allele among the high altitude people, which is adaptive for them. However, our own study from Tawang Monpa, here you see the picture of Tawang Monpa, and the other side also is the Tawang city. We have found that both I and D alleles are co-dominant among this population. That is on the genetic aspect. Also, from the physiological adaptation point of view, which is nitric oxide, has also found to be extremely important in influencing high altitude natives, especially because of its role in regulating pulmonary blood flow. Nitric oxide is a chemical we generally synthesize in our lungs, and that helps in smoothen all the lung cells in our body. As a result, it dilates the vessels and blood flow increases. In an area, in an altitude, in an environmental condition where oxygen is very low, blood flow increment will always be helpful. However, I must mention here that nitric oxide, too much of nitric oxide in our exhaled breath is also not adaptive, because it has been found that higher level of nitric oxide is generally a symptom of chronic obstructive pulmonary disorders, including asthma. In fact, that is how nitric oxide in our exhaled breath was first discovered in only last century, towards the end of last century, when they found that asthmatic patients, they have a high nitric oxide. But studies from other part of the world on high altitude adaptation suggest that there are populations like Bolivian or Tibetans who have shown higher level of nitric oxide in their exhaled breath as compared to low altitude people. But even our own study from Tawang Monpa suggests consistently lower level of exhaled nitric oxide as compared to low altitude population. This is the reason I'm mentioning all this diversity in the high altitude adaptation studies, just to emphasis on the point that there are different ways of adapting in the same environment. Geographically disparate populations with different or similar ethnic origin develop distinctly different biological adaptive mechanisms for surviving in the oxygen-thin air found at high altitude. It's very interesting that stresses, challenges at high altitude are same. Most important one is this hypobaric hypoxia, that means less oxygen in our blood because of the thin oxygen air, less oxygen in the ambient air, but adaptive strategies are different. Of course, we have to understand as an anthropologist that this is evolutionary significant. This has a huge evolutionary significance into it, why we vary in our adaptive strategies or mechanisms. In conclusion, when we talk about high altitude adaptation studies, there are three groups of population need to be studied if we want to understand a composite view of high altitude problems. And these three groups are, first of all, the indigenous populations who are living there permanently, which has been documented very well in anthropology and biological anthropology study. Second and third groups are the soldiers who are there for few years, and the mountaineer third groups are the mountaineers or the tourists who ascend there for few weeks or few months and faces a lot of problems, high altitude problems. So these groups are not studied in anthropology very well or very extensively. Of course, DIPAS or DRDO, these are the organizations who have done extremely well in documenting the problems of soldiers, Indian soldiers, and those mountaineers, and developed many medicines as well. But in anthropology, we do need studies in these among these two groups so that we compare these groups' problems and their physiological or genetic adaptation or features along with this indigenous population so that we understand and we can come up with a more natural kind of solution instead of depending on only medicine for our Indian soldiers and mountaineers people, because it took time to adapt to high altitude area, the spaces, and we need to understand how that can be more beneficial for these groups. So at the very end, I would like to take this opportunity to convey also the fact that we should encourage, the young anthropologists. There are a lot of area in high altitude adaptation studies where data should be collected. We have enormous dearth of data, and I want young anthropologists to take more interest in high altitude adaptation studies so that we can come up with a better idea or adaptive strategies of this high altitude area, the populations permanently living there, or even the soldiers there for a brief period of time for a better understanding and human welfare. Thank you.
Thank you, Sugita, for your nice presentation. Now the last speaker is Mithun Singh.
Sir, would you kindly introduce Mithun?
Yes, sir. Mithun Singh. Sir, I think I have to wind up before 9:30 or what? Any time limit is there?
No, please continue.
Okay.
Okay. Please.
Okay. So the next speaker is Mithun Singh. He is working as superintending anthropologist in Anthropology Survey of India and presently officiating as the head of office Southern Region. He is the recipient of Young Scientist Award from Indian Science Congress Association. He is also a recipient of International Travel Award from ICMR and also Professor B.M. Das Memorial Award. He represented Government of India to Central Europe and USA on various occasions. He is also a recipient of research fellowship from UGC and ICSR. His primary research interest lies on axiology, human genetics, variation, and human evolution. He has published more than 30 research publications and one book to his credit. He participated several national and international conferences. Now he is going to present on the perspectives of tolerance in 21st century, a bioanthropological look. Now may I request Professor Dr. Mithun to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, sir. Professor Papparao, sir, thank you very much. So, just a minute. So, am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. And respected Professor Deepak Behra, sir, Vice Chancellor and of Sambalpur University, and General President of UIAF, Professor S. Gregory, sir, former Professor of Kannur University, and Member Secretary of UIAF, Professor Papparao, sir, former Professor of SB University and Moderator of this session, Professor, all my professors, my respected panelists, all my respected teachers present here, distinguished dignitaries and friends. So I thank Professor Behera sir for inviting me to speak for such an important occasion. And in fact, I was wondering what to speak on this special occasion, but the dilemma to some extent was eliminated when I got the concept note of the webinar, and it tells that we have to question ourselves how our researches will contribute to the welfare of human society. So in this context, so I have chosen to discuss on the topic of on perspective of tolerance in 21st century, a biological outlook. So I hope the presentation is visible to all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the title actually got its influence from the online lecture held on 16th of November 2020 under this special forum, this UIAF, by respected Professor Vinay-Kumar Srivastava, which was chaired by respected Professor P.C. Joshi, commemorating the International Tolerance Day. So, as a biological anthropologist, actually, so we favored take up this biological issues like obesity and try to correlate socio-cultural actually covariates with it, as Dr. Reddy was talking about. But like fertility also, we take the determinants of fertility in the society. But here I have shifted the orientation from the perspective of physical anthropology, this physical parameters, to a social parameter, and try to interlink the social parameters with the biological parameters. So if you talk about this tolerance as a social problem, sorry, is it visible?
No, now it is not visible.
Now it is only dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, now this is okay. So, if you talk about intolerance as a social problem, so I have separated this intolerance into three separate sections. One is self, then next is the family level intolerance, and the third is the society level intolerance. So first, for representing self, let us take the case of suicide as an example of self intolerance. So there is a discomfort of intolerance and the acquired capability of suicide. For suicide, there are lots of publications that are available on that issue. So to take up this issue that say on self-tolerance, and there are other activities like suicide of the farmers. But if you have to consider whether this socioeconomic criteria of the individuals are very much important to take care of this suicide issue. But no, this is not the fact. Like if you take care of the recent incidents of this CCD owner, that is Siddhartha, and Jia Khan, as well as the recent suicide issue of Sushant Singh Rajput. So this cases tells us that it's not only the economic condition of the person, but other forces which may trigger a person to commit suicide. So another this Indian scenario, if you talk about the societal tendency, you will get lots of information, and recently there are published publications from Indian Journal of Medical Research in 2019, and as well as the Lancet, where it confines the study on the gender differentials as well as state variation of suicidal deaths in India. So these are suicide cases are increasing, if you see, and it shows the intolerance level, self-intolerance level in the society. In 2016, the number of suicide in India had increased to 2,30,314, and suicide was the most common cause of death, both in the age group of 15 to 29 years and 15 to 39 years. So this is the just a brief, just a snapshot of the suicide rates in all over India, all over the world, and you will see that the India is a very had taken a very special place in terms of the suicide cases all over the world. So we have to be united to prevent these suicide cases. Now coming to the family level intolerance, so I have taken as a proxy measure, as a divorce, as a proxy measure of this family level intolerance. And if you see that this quote of Paul Sweeney, so she has already told that a wedding anniversary is the celebration of love, trust, partnership, and tolerance and tenacity. The older the order varies for any given year, so it depends upon the order also. But this tolerance, level of tolerance, is a very important issue to push the marriage life way forward. So there are lots of publications as well as news also, those who are coming as a happily divorced. So divorce cases are also increasing in India day by day. India, the recent statistics show that the number of divorce cases has come up went up to 0.50 per 1,000 marriages in 1988 to 13 per 1,000 in 2019. It has been published in Deccal Herald recently. And if you talk about the intolerance level in the society, so I have taken up the issues of rape cases in the society, the increasing rape cases, which is nothing but the sex without the consent is just rape. So if you talk about the rape cultures in India, if you can find out in the publication of Outlook that only a heightened intolerance for any kind of sexual violence as a social force will begin to chip away at the monumentalization of rape cultures in India, and our collective melancholia must be far more productive. So it's a very important issue of intolerance in the society. But if you think about whether it depends on the sex of the individual, the age of the individual, or the dress pattern of the individual, no, certainly not. Because in Mumbai, the recent newspaper that came up that dogs who was allegedly gang raped by four men, which died actually in hospital area, and there is a case of Chandigarh that the goat owner told police that up to 8 during drug addicts and alcoholics stole the animal from him before taking to a deserted house in the village where they were later found dead. That means goat were also got raped in India. And if you talk about Mumbai gang rape cases also, there are stray dog who got raped and arrested after animal activists and PETA India file FIR. So there are lots of cases on animal rapes, and there are horrific cases of male rapes in Asia also. So India still there are the condition of rape is still has a question mark whether male rape has taken place or not. But in Southeastern Asia's countries, so there are the male rape case is already established, and in recent Indonesia, if you'll find in 2013. So Imayartini is a woman who became the first Indonesian woman to be sentenced to prison because she has raped 6 teenage boys. So she has escaped by the law after she was considered to have a mental disorder. But so you can see that this mental disorder has playing a primordial role to tackle this intolerance in this society. So recently, the Delhi University Anthropology Department has conducted a very important webinar on this mental health and well-being in post-COVID world. because this during this COVID situation, this societal tolerance, that is suicide case, rape case, has went on very increasing. So it was a very important incorporation as well as input from the Department of Anthropology in this COVID scenario. So and in this the same context, Jeffrey Snacks, the director of Sustainable Development Solution Network and the senior event advisor, he's told that countries that rank better in happiness are the ones that have healthy balance of prosperity, as conventionally measured social capital, meaning a high degree of trust in a society, low inequality and confidence in the government. So this is a very important point to take care of. Now, in this parameter, what biological anthropologists will do here? This is the main question of this hour. And here I will try to drag your attention that one of the most quoted facts about the happiness goes as follows, that 50% of happiness is determined by your genes, and it has been already established by twin studies, and 10% of happiness is determined by the circumstances in which you live, and 40% of happiness is determined by your attitude or optimism and the way you handle the situation. It has been published in several articles. So how this genetic component contribute to the national differences in happiness? It has been published in Journal of Happiness Studies recently, which says that they have found a strong correlation between a nation's happiness and the presence of the allele A in the fatty acid amide hydrolase gene variant that is in its citizens' genetic makeup. So the genetics of this population is a very important criteria, as you have noticed that 50% of the genetics is contributing to the happiness of a particular nation. So in 2019, as you know, that this happiness index is becoming a very important index in terms of the development of a particular nation. So in terms of happiness index, India was placed on 140 position, whereas the economically poor and our neighbor country, that is Bangladesh, is at 107 position, and they are far ahead of us in terms of happiness index. So what may be the reason for that? We don't know the reason of that. Although the world 5th largest economy, that is India, has spent only 0.05% of its health budget annually on mental health over the last few years, much lower even the average spending of lower income countries like Bangladesh. So which comes around almost 0.5% of the healthcare budget. So now last year, 2018, Bangladesh came up with a new Mental Health Act also in 2018, which replaced the outdated 105-year-old Untitled Act. So in 2000, that was passed in 1912. So it came up in publication in Lancet 2018 also. But see, recently founded United Arab Emirates, who has founded their nation in 1971. So they have also a very high rank in terms of happiness index. That is 21st rank in the happiness index. In 2016, when I was searching the condition of UAE, I was taken aback by the news that they have a separate ministry of tolerance, established ministry, and now led by His Highness Sheikh Nayan bin Mubarak. So it's a very important point if we talk about intolerance in India and some of the points we have to tackle in future also. This is actually Ministry of Tolerance, the building of which can be easily seen in this picture. So now initiatives to be taken in India. So India should initiate new studies on genetic screening of candidate genes, what Professor Saraswati was telling. And it is specific for the happiness in different sections of population in India, and the GDP contribution of mental health issues should be increased, and there should be a Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, please continue. Please continue.
Okay. And there should be a separate bill for mental health in India. So the main question is, who will build the cat? Now, only the anthropologists can and should build the cat. This is my humble submission. Because the purpose of anthropology is to make the world safe for human differences. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think, thank you, Nitin, for a nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
So the next part of the program is, if there are any clarifications, the available persons, they can ask. I think I would like to know, Professor Arup is there, sir? Professor Arup?
Yes, sir. I'm here. I'm here, sir. I was
only
listening for
1 minute. If you
Oh,
have
wow.
any.
Okay, 1 minute. I have nothing to say because it's really surprising that you will be calling me. And
I don't know, because your name is there. Your name is there.
Okay,
On the
fine.
screen.
I'm really grateful to you, Professor Papparao, and
Okay,
grateful
yes,
to
alright.
Professor Deepak Behera and Professor Gregory George. Knew me for a long time. So I'm a regular faculty from 1993. I just introduction of myself in Vishwabharati, founded by Rabindranath Tagore, and got greatest opportunity to join as a faculty in my alma mater, Calcutta University. And really, I feel so much happy and glad that one of my esteemed colleagues from Calcutta University initiated introducing the 21st century biological anthropology in this forum, and personally I trust on his acumen as one of the effective think tanks of the UIAF. Nevertheless, everybody has spoken so much good, really so much. I enjoyed so much. And finally, just 1 minute, I would like to say I am with the last speaker, Dr. Michun Shikdar. Yes, the purpose of anthropology is to make the world safe for the human differences, and nevertheless, you know what. So thank you very much that you have given me an opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Neeta Madam. Professor Neeta Madam.
I think Professor Papparao, it is getting late. You should conclude.
No, sir. No, I'm not getting late because Neeta Madam is there. That's why I wanted to any interaction.
Mitra, madam.
Neeta Madam.
Are you talking about Nita Mawar?
Yes, Madam. Madam. Yes, yourself.
Yeah.
Because you are there throughout this session. I'm seeing your picture.
Yeah, madam.
It's good to talk to everyone here and specifically congratulate all the speakers and most of all the organizers for having organized this series of webinars. So I think it is going to be an important part for anthropologists to be known all over, because this would be accessed and we must make sure that more and more people access it. And I think some of the very common things that came up was the issue of how anthropologists can actually go in outside, rather than being confined to their own circle, but they need to move out and how they can spread out. And one way is that, we have some kind of a collaboration of our departments with the research institutes. I've been talking about these things in issues, how we can collaborate with different organizations, like we said about the research students. I'm sure research students, because we get people from different departments, from the universities and others in our research institutes. So similarly, the anthropology students could also get into different research organizations, learn from them, contribute there, and then, in future it will help them to better their own things. So what we actually inculcate is that people come to the departments and then we initiate them to present what they have done in, say, the 3-month period or the 6-month period, because, we are training them to become real young researchers from the very beginning. So seeds are sown from there itself. So that's important. And overall, as a long-term strategy, I think it's very important to network with these organizations to carry out programs for MScs and PhDs as a long-term strategy. And then our webinar series is there, but I think if we can come out with some publications as a series get an ISBN number. So I think that will be important, because our research should be used as an advocacy tool to spread out to different people. Because from here we should really move further into becoming policies that changes. And what we do at our institute, what we have been always doing it, whatever research that we have been carrying out, when we are disseminating research, whatever we are doing it, so we disseminate it with the specific stakeholders. Call them, bring them that these are the real issues. Call the community representatives on whom we have worked. Let them know how it is being related. We develop a trust at both levels, at the level of policy making and at the level of the community where the work is being done. So I think this is something helpful, and I'm trying to do the same thing because I'm now a visiting faculty at the Sri University at Cuttack. So we are trying to bring that, and I'm sure Dr. Behera, I would be in touch with you when I come to Odisha. But this is something that we would really like to see, that we inculcate these kinds of things right from the very beginning when students are there, so that they feel a part of a big whole. Anthropology as a method is a very important one. Anthropology as a subject, as a discipline is very important. But how we network with other organizations is very important, because we should not remain isolated. We have to become a part of a big system. So I think anthropologists are the best to see how we can contribute in different. Dr. Sigdar's issue about, discussion about how we can really do it. Even the example of the intolerance has been something very important, and anthropologists are the best people to bring out these issues. But it's important to network, have the support, and when we have this whole group support, I think, which was something which we never had during the time when we had just completed our, studies. And I think that is something that we should all, so we should make this as a very important advocacy group of creating a niche for anthropologists at various places, where we increase the demand for anthropologists, we increase, what people think that anthropology can do. And I think we are the best people to do it. And this group, I'm sure, would contribute in a big way.
Okay.
So and thank you, madam. Like to be a part of this group in a very big way. Whenever you want, I'm there. Thank you very much.
Sir, now I would like to summarize the entire proceedings of the symposium, sir. It seems that all the speakers agreed for the critical analysis and holistic approach in biological anthropology research. This is one important thing. The second one is collaboration with various institutions, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary researches. And also some speakers also identified the new areas of research in the field of biological anthropology, that is particularly in the non-communicable diseases like obesity, hypertension, etc. And another important speaker, Professor Subho, has made an excellent presentation with regard to choosing of journals and what are the challenges. That is also a very important dimension, particularly for young scholars. And Sugita Ghosh has presented how human populations are adapted to the different ecological conditions also. And Dr. Kozan Reddy also identified the risk factors for high longevity and also on various things. And Dr. Mithun has presented a very nice paper, happiness, about happiness, what are the genes which are responsible for the happiness has to be explored. And also another important thing is in what are the causes for intolerance at the individual level, family level, and society level also. So all the speakers, Professor Jivan also stressed the importance of biological anthropology in various subfields, and Professor Mitashree Mitra Madam also spoken about the various applied aspects of anthropology and coordination within anthropology, various branches, and also in interdisciplinary also. So all these things, I think these are some of my important findings of the today's presentation, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Papparao.
And at the last, I thank Dr. Professor Behera, the Vice Chancellor of Sambalpur University, and Dr. Gregory for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I express my profound thanks for the same, sir. I also express my thanks to all the speakers and Sandeep for providing all support in this endeavor.
Thank you, Professor Papparao,
Okay, sir.
the moderator of today's symposium, and all the panelists. I would like to congratulate each panelist and the moderator for making this symposium vibrant. And even, I come from a different background. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to each one of you because you touch upon new areas of research, and that was quite kind of eye-opener for all of us. Thank you very much. And I would now like to request the General Secretary of the Forum, Professor Gregory, propose a vote of thanks. Professor Gregory.
Very good evening to all. It was a wonderful webinar, as Professor Begra and others pointed out. Though we are from a socio-cultural anthropology background, it was, we can understand each and every point that had been brought out by different webinar speakers. In fact, I don't know whether it is a coincidence that we had a variety of presentation. Each one touched upon different areas, which together makes a holistic view of anthropology.
Yes.
And the entire, all the speakers, we had the elder people, the professors. I think it was a mixed group of speakers, from the very youngsters like Sugita Ghosh to the seniors. We had a very mixed group, and we had the experience as well as the field level researchers. Like Sugita Ghosh was touching upon the real research problem. Mithun was touching upon a very innovative area where we can apply anthropology and biological anthropology in different perspectives. And Professor Subho was touching upon how we can break the barriers in publishing. And Mitashree and everyone was touching upon how we can bring out a holistic understanding of anthropology and impact the policies. And I should also appreciate, I can see Professor Vijay Sagai very, very patiently, hearing all this, Professor Nita Mawar and Professor Arup Bandavadhyay, and I'm really appreciating that all these people have given a lot of strength to the forum for the initiatives of the forum and in the conduct of the webinars. I'm sure that a lot of responsibilities on the forum to take new initiatives and take anthropology to new horizons. I'm sure all of us together we can make the difference. Thank you very much to one and all those who participated in the seminar, webinar, and all those who have patiently stayed till it's already 9:30, beyond 9:30, and I must thank everyone who have been very patiently sitting throughout the webinar and giving your support and your interest in the webinar. Hope we will meet again in the next webinar. And I think the participation went beyond 80. Now it has come down to 45. But anyway, this is going to be very, very wonderful session. This is we have to appreciate each and everyone. And I thank you, and let us meet once again.